Be honest with me right now.
Yeah.
You are, you're listening to this, and you probably think your degree or your job title or just your general tech savviness acts like this invisible shield against scams.
Right. It's a very common assumption.
Yeah, you're sitting there thinking, I mean, I'm an educated person. I read the news every morning. I know how the internet works. I have two-factor authentication turned on for everything, so I could never, ever be hacked over a simple phone call.
Yeah, that's exactly the mindset.
But what if that exact confidence, like that profound belief in your own intelligence, is actually the very thing a scammer uses to hack you?
It's a deeply uncomfortable thought, honestly. But when you actually look at the sources and the data surrounding modern fraud, particularly this absolute epidemic of highly sophisticated financial scams sweeping across India right now, well, it completely shatters that illusion of safety.
It really does.
Because the victim list isn't just made up of inexperienced internet users or the digitally unaware. The people losing their life savings are highly educated professionals. I mean, we are talking about doctors, engineers, senior IT professionals. Wow.
Chartered accountants? Startup founders?
The people who literally build the digital infrastructure. I mean, the people who manage corporate finances for a living. That is what is so hard to wrap my head around.
Exactly. They're the ones who design the systems.
Because when I hear about someone getting scammed out of their life savings, there's always this terrible, almost judgmental reflex to think, well, they must have missed something obvious. But you're saying the people getting hit the hardest are the ones who are supposed to know better.
And this forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. How does a professional scammer look at these individuals? Because I think we have this Hollywood image of a scammer as some guy in a dark hoodie trying to brute force a password through a firewall.
Right, like mashing away at a keyboard in a basement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the modern scammer doesn't look at a tech professional as an impenetrable fortress of digital security. They look at them as highly predictable human targets.
Predictable. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, they aren't trying to outsmart an IT professional's technical knowledge. They are bypassing the technology entirely, and they're hacking the human operating system.
Okay, we need to really dig into this premise for this deep dive, because the idea that being smart actually makes you a target feels completely counterintuitive. I mean, intelligence is supposed to be a defense mechanism. How on earth does a scammer view a quote-unquote smart, highly educated person as an easy mark?
It comes down to understanding the business model of modern fraud. Scammers operate on this incredibly simple, almost Darwinian mindset regarding resource allocation. They know that genuinely disconnected people, or people who aren't deeply embedded in the digital economy, are actually quite difficult to scam in these sophisticated ways.
Wait, really? Because you'd think they'd be the easiest.
Not at all, because if you call someone who doesn't use digital banking or who doesn't even care about their credit score, you have no leverage. You can't threaten them with a frozen account because they don't care.
Oh, right. They just hang up.
Exactly. But smart people, educated, upwardly mobile professionals, they are completely tied into the system, and more importantly, their behavior patterns are highly predictable.
Predictable in what way? Are you saying all corporate professionals basically act the same?
Well, think about the cognitive traits that make someone successful in a modern corporate environment. How do you get promoted? You are trained to make fast decisions. You develop a high degree of trust in your own judgment.
That is true.
And crucially, you are almost always incredibly busy. I mean, the modern professional simply does not have the time or the mental bandwidth to stop and meticulously verify every single detail of every single digital interaction they have in a 24-hour period.
So it's the curse of efficiency. The very thing that makes you good at your job is what makes you vulnerable.
That is the ultimate irony here. The cognitive traits that get you that corner office are the exact vulnerabilities a scam syndicate exploits. In fast-paced professions, your brain is quite literally trained to optimize. You develop heuristics, these incredibly fast mental shortcuts to quickly clear tasks and reduce cognitive load.
Right. You have to, or you drown in work.
Exactly. Imagine a startup founder or a senior doctor clearing out their inbox. They aren't reading every word of every email. They're pattern matching.
They're scanning for familiar logos.
Yes, logos, specific sender names, action verbs. And the speed at which that founder clears their inbox is the exact same speed at which they might blindly approve a fraudulent request that just happens to match that familiar pattern.
I have to push back on this a little bit, though. Isn't being fast and decisive an objectively necessary thing? I mean, if you hesitate on every single email, every single Slack message, every single transaction, you'd get absolutely nothing done. You'd be paralyzed. The modern economy basically demands speed.
Oh, it absolutely does demand speed. And those mental shortcuts are evolutionary marvels, right? They keep us from becoming paralyzed by decision fatigue, but they create a massive exploitable blind spot for security.
How so?
Because when you optimize for speed, you inherently sacrifice deep verification.
It's like driving on the highway on autopilot. Let's say you've driven that same exact route from your house to the office 1,000 times. You know every curve, every pothole, every exit.
Right, you know it like the back of your hand.
Exactly. You're so confident in your driving skills, and you're so focused on getting to the office quickly to tackle your day that you stop paying conscious attention to the road. You're mentally drafting an email or listening to the news, just coasting on muscle memory.
Yes, exactly.
And because of that, you're actually far more likely to crash if someone suddenly slams on their brakes or swerves into your lane than a nervous beginner driver who has both hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, eyes wide open, actively scanning for danger.
That analogy captures the dynamic perfectly. The beginner driver has zero assumptions about the road. They are hyper alert because they are acutely aware of their own lack of expertise. Their brain is actively processing every new piece of information as a potential threat.
Right, because they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. But the seasoned driver, their brain has classified the commute as safe and predictable. They assume they know the road. And when we apply this to the corporate world, our modern work culture essentially grooms professionals to be the perfect victims for social engineering.
Because we glorify constant busyness.
We do. We praise rapid response times. We expect people to juggle 10 complex tasks at once. And in doing so, we unintentionally strip away the time and the critical thinking required to spot anomalies.
Man. So we are optimizing ourselves right into the trap. Our blind trust in our own efficiency leads us straight to the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
And the sources point out that this leads directly into the first and perhaps most insidious psychological trap scammers set for us. It's not a technological trap. It's our own ego.
The ego is the ultimate backdoor into the human mind. Psychologists call it overconfidence bias. And in this context, it manifests as what researchers identify as the I know everything syndrome.
The I know everything syndrome.
Yes, and this is incredibly dangerous. It's the internal monologue that says, I've been a software engineer for 10 years. I can easily spot a phishing attempt. Or I'm a chartered accountant. I understand banking protocols better than anyone.
Okay.
I simply can't be defrauded.
Which creates massive blind spots.
Exactly. Those very thoughts create massive psychological blind spots.
I get the theory, but help me understand the mechanics of it. If I'm an IT guy, I do know what phishing looks like. I know to look for the weird sender address, the terrible grammar, the bizarre sense of urgency, the strange URLs. Why doesn't that knowledge protect me?
Because you are looking for the threats of 2014, not the threats of today. The modern scammer isn't sending you an email from a supposed foreign prince with terrible spelling and bizarre formatting anymore.
Right, the Nigerian prince scams, those are gone.
They are. Those obvious scams were designed to filter out the skeptics and catch the truly naive. To catch the IT guy, they bypass those rudimentary technical defenses by presenting an incredibly familiar, frictionless situation.
Frictionless meaning it just blends right in.
Exactly. They engineer a stimulus that perfectly matches your daily routine so that your brain's threat detection system doesn't even wake up.
So they essentially use familiarity as a cloaking device.
Yes. Let's say they send an email that looks, and I mean pixel, perfectly, indistinguishably like a real internal memo from your company's HR department. The hex codes for the corporate colors are exact. The font is right.
The corporate jargon, the tone, the signature block.
Everything. It is a mirror image of the emails you get every single week. When you open that email, your brain doesn't flag a threat. It just says, another routine HR email about open enrollment or tax compliance. Process it, clear the notification, and move on.
And this is where that highway autopilot kicks in. Because we're moving fast, we just accept the familiar visual cues without inspecting the engine underneath.
But here is where the ego takes a bad situation and makes it fatal. The I know everything syndrome ensures that even if there is a tiny anomaly, maybe the URL is off by one single letter or the routing number looks slightly unfamiliar, the victim will actively ignore it.
Wait, why would they ignore it if they see it?
In this state of overconfidence, victims refuse to double-check something because they fundamentally believe they cannot be fooled. Their ego tells them, if this were a scam, I would feel it. I would know. Since I don't feel like I'm being scammed, this must be legitimate.
That is a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
You're saying that deep industry knowledge can actually become a liability.
It absolutely becomes a liability.
Because familiarity breeds complacency. If you think you know the system inside and out, you stop questioning the fundamental reality of the system.
The more specialized knowledge you have, the more cognitive dissonance you experience when something doesn't align with your worldview. Admitting that you, the expert, might have just clicked on a malicious link feels like a direct insult to your own intelligence.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
It's deeply embarrassing. So rather than face that uncomfortable feeling of being wrong, the brain often rationalizes the anomaly away.
Let's ground this for everyone listening. Imagine that seasoned IT professional we've been talking about. It's 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. They are exhausted. They've been putting out fires all week, and they just want to log off and go home.
A very vulnerable time.
Suddenly an email pops up. It's beautifully spoofed from internal HR. The subject line says, "Action required, re-authenticate direct deposit information for the new fiscal year." The IT pro glances at it. Their internal monologue, fueled by ego, says, "I build these authentication systems. I know what I'm doing."
Right.
So they click the link just to clear the task from their queue, completely missing that the URL is spelled with a 0 instead of an O.
Yeah.
They fill in their credentials, hit submit, and close the laptop. Done.
And that tiny window of arrogance is all the scammer needs. They don't need to break down your firewall. They just need to wait for your ego to open the front door and invite them in. But getting in is only phase one. Once they have your attention, once they've slipped past that initial filter using familiarity and ego, they have a new problem. They need to make sure you don't snap out of that autopilot state.
Right, because if I have even 10 seconds to think about why HR needs my password, the illusion breaks. So how do they keep you under the spell?
They do it by completely hijacking your logical brain. They bypass the rational thought centers and trigger your primal survival instincts. And the sources show they consistently use two incredibly powerful psychological levers to achieve this: urgency and authority.
Let's talk about those levers. Urgency and authority. We hear these terms a lot in marketing, but how are they weaponized in a scam?
It's marketing psychology taken to a malicious extreme. Scammers use intense urgency pressure, this relentless demand that you do it right, this second or face catastrophic consequences, and they pair that with authority fear.
Okay, give me an example of authority fear.
Well, in India, for example, they invoke the most intimidating institutions imaginable. The local police, the cybercrime branch, the Reserve Bank of India, the Income Tax Department, or the Telecom Regulatory Authority.
They use the classic threats we all dread, right? Like your bank account has been flagged for money laundering and will be frozen in 10 minutes.
Yes, or your PAN card is being suspended due to tax fraud. The cyber cell has found your Aadhaar number linked to illegal activities, and an arrest warrant is being issued right now.
Man, that is heavy stuff.
Now, to truly understand why smart people fall for this, we have to look at the biology of the reaction. We need to be crystal clear on this point. Falling for an authority-based scam is almost never a logical failing. It is a biological one.
Explain the biology to me. What exactly is happening in the brain when you get that phone call?
When you are suddenly confronted with an extreme, unexpected threat from a perceived position of absolute authority, your body reacts instantaneously. And we have to acknowledge that culturally, in places like India, the weight of authority figures, especially the police or government agencies, is immense.
The fear of state power is deeply ingrained.
Deeply ingrained. So when the caller says they are from the cyber police and you are about to be arrested, your heart rate spikes. Your adrenal glands flood your system with cortisol and adrenaline.
The classic fight or flight response.
Precisely. And here is the critical physiological mechanism. When you enter a fight or flight state, your brain actually physically diverts energy and blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, really? It actually shifts the blood flow.
It physically shifts. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain responsible for complex logic, skepticism, and critical thinking. Instead, it activates the amygdala, the primal emotional center of the brain. You are instantly thrust into survival mode.
Wow.
The scam is no longer a puzzle to be solved logically. It is an immediate physical threat to be survived. Fear takes the wheel.
That makes so much sense. It's like imagine you were sitting in a quiet room taking a massively complex doctoral level mathematics exam. You're deep in the equations using all your specialized, highly trained knowledge. You are the smartest person in the room. Suddenly, the fire alarm goes off. The overhead sprinklers turn on, smoke starts pouring through the air vents, and someone screams down the hallway that the building is collapsing. In that moment, are you going to sit there and double-check your long division?
Absolutely not. You drop your pencil, you leave your paper on the desk, and you run for the nearest exit. Your math skills are entirely irrelevant to surviving the fire.
Exactly. Scammers are essentially pulling the fire alarm in your brain. They create so much artificial smoke and noise threats of arrest threats of financial ruin that you completely forget all your technical knowledge.
Yes.
The IT professional entirely forgets the rules of digital hygiene because their biology is screaming at them that the police are physically on their way to their house. You can't outthink a fire alarm.
And if we extrapolate on that, look at the reality of modern life. Think about the massive digitization of our vital services. Over the last decade, everything has moved online. Your banking, your identity cards, your tax documents, your medical records, your investments.
It is all tied to your digital identity.
It is. This transition has given scammers incredibly powerful existential levers to pull. The threat of losing access to your digital life, of having your bank accounts frozen or your identity permanently suspended, is akin to a digital death sentence for a modern professional.
It really is. It is the modern equivalent of being exiled from society.
So when they threaten that access, the fear they induce is profoundly, viscerally real.
That is genuinely terrifying because when you explain the biology of it, it stops feeling like a clever trick and starts feeling like an ambush. You're being biochemically hacked.
You are.
But fear isn't the only emotion that overrides logic, is it? I mean, as human beings, we are driven by other profound forces besides just running away from a fire.
We certainly are. And the most sophisticated scammers are equally adept at weaponizing our desires. They don't just use the stick, they are masters of the carrot. This brings us to another critical vulnerability: the manipulation of greed, opportunity, and fundamental emotional needs.
So what does that look like? Because normally when we talk about scams, the narrative is dominated by fear-based tactics. You know, the fake IRS agent, the threatening police call. But you're saying positive emotions like excitement or hope can be just as blinding.
Often they are much more dangerous because with a positive emotion, the victim becomes a willing, eager participant in their own deception for a much longer period. Scammers tap into greed, the desire for financial freedom, the ambition for career advancement, or even the deep human ache for connection.
Oh, wow.
We see this constantly manifesting in massive investment scams promising double or triple returns in a matter of weeks through crypto or obscure trading platforms. We see it in sophisticated job scams offering impossibly high salaries with luxury perks for minimal remote work.
And relationship scams too, right?
Exactly. The classic long-term catfishing where they offer love, validation, and companionship to someone who is deeply, quietly lonely.
So instead of pulling the fire alarm and causing a panic, they are calmly walking up to you and handing you a winning lottery ticket, or the offer letter for your absolute dream job, or introducing you to your perfect partner.
That's the mechanism. The scammer's goal here is to carefully uncover what the victim wants most in the world, and then offer a perfectly tailored illusion of that exact thing.
Right.
When a scammer presents a plausible solution to your deepest, most secret desire, whether that is the financial independence to finally quit a job you despise, a prestigious career breakthrough, or simply someone who asks how your day was, the brain floods with dopamine.
The reward chemical.
Yeah.
The feel-good neurotransmitter.
Yes. And just like a massive spike of cortisol and adrenaline and a fear response, a massive flood of dopamine also drastically suppresses critical thinking and skepticism. You want the illusion to be true so desperately that your brain willfully ignores the glaring red flags.
Like the dopamine rush essentially tells your logic center to shut up and let the good feelings continue.
Exactly.
It's the classic too good to be true dynamic. But what strikes me is the evolution of the tactic. They aren't just blasting out a million generic emails saying, congratulations, you won a random international lottery you never entered. That doesn't work on educated professionals anymore.
Well, it doesn't.
They are utilizing hyper-specific profiling. They go to your LinkedIn page. They study your career trajectory. They see that you've been stuck in the exact same mid-level management role for 6 long years. They look at your endorsements to see your exact skill set.
Yes.
And then they don't offer you $1 million. They approach you with an incredibly detailed, highly plausible offer for a senior director role at a recognized rival firm. The salary they offer is just high enough to be life-changing for you, but not so astronomically high that your logical brain instantly screams fake.
They weaponize your specific stagnation. They offer the exact escape hatch you've been secretly praying for.
They do their homework. They don't just jiggle the handle to see if the door is unlocked. They study the lock, they understand its pins and tumblers, and they forge the exact psychological key required to turn it.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Okay, we've laid out the theoretical framework. We have these powerful elements: the overconfidence of the victim, the biological hijacking through urgency and authority, and the blinding power of emotional manipulation. But how do these abstract concepts actually come together in a real-world scenario? How does a scammer sequence these levers?
Well, to truly understand how lethal this combination is, we need to walk through a highly specific documented case study from the sources. Let's look at the anatomy of a hack. The case of a man we'll call Rohit.
Let's break this down scene by scene, because this is where all the psychological theory we've discussed hits the cold, hard pavement. Rohit is a real person from the research data. He is an IT professional living in Pune. He's earning 18 lakhs per annum.
Right.
Right away, this demographic data is vital. It establishes that Rohit is successful, he is highly educated, he is in the upper middle class, and he is deeply tech savvy. He literally builds and manages digital systems for a living.
He represents the exact demographic that confidently believes they are entirely immune to being scammed over a phone call.
Right, so put yourself in Rohit's shoes. It's a regular workday. His phone rings, he answers it, and the person on the other end is speaking in a calm, highly professional tone, perhaps with the faint ambient sound of a busy call center in the background.
Setting the stage perfectly.
The caller says, "Good afternoon, sir. I am calling from the fraud detection department of your bank. We have flagged a highly suspicious transaction on your credit card." Now, Rohit's initial internal thought process is exactly what we'd expect from an IT guy. I know all about financial fraud. I am a careful, digitally secure person. Let's see what this is about.
Notice what happens there. He is relying entirely on his ego. His I know everything syndrome is active. He doesn't hang up the phone to verify. He engages because he believes he has the situation completely under his intellectual control.
Because the caller sounds legitimate. And here is where the trap actually springs. The caller doesn't start asking for private information blindly. The caller leads with private information. The caller addresses Rohit by his full legal name. They name the exact bank branch he uses. And terrifyingly, they cite the approximate amount of the last legitimate purchase he made online.
This is step one of the scammer's operational playbook. Build trust using fragmented truth. By providing accurate, highly private details right out of the gate, the scammer bypasses Rohit's initial skepticism.
Because it's his real data.
Yes. Rohit's brain instantly runs a heuristic check and registers the stranger possesses insider data that only my bank should have. Therefore, this stranger must be an authorized representative of my bank. The familiarity of his own data lowers his psychological guard completely.
Okay, so the foundation of trust is established. Rohit genuinely believes he is talking to his bank's security team. What is the scammer's next move?
The scammer immediately pivots to create urgency and leverage authority. The calm tone shifts to one of serious concern. The caller says, "Sir, someone is currently attempting to authorize a massive international transfer. If we don't block this transaction in the system right, this second 1 lakh rupees will be permanently deducted from your account."
And there it is. Bam! They
Yeah.
just pulled the fire alarm.
Exactly. The sudden threat of losing 1 lakh rupees is a massive unexpected stressor. The amygdala activates instantly. Rohit is no longer a rational IT professional evaluating the security protocols of a phone call. He is a vulnerable human being in a state of acute panic, desperate to protect his hard-earned savings.
And the scammer doesn't give his brain a single second to reboot. They apply intense time pressure. The caller says, "Sir, the transaction is processing. If we don't do this now, the money is gone."
The psychological vice is tightening around him. You have the unquestioned authority of the bank's fraud department, the biological fear of immediate financial devastation, and the extreme urgency of a ticking clock. Rohit's prefrontal cortex is effectively offline. He is entirely in survival mode.
So with the victim in full panic, the caller offers the solution, the lifeline. The caller says, "Sir, I can block it from my end, but I need your authorization. I just need the OTP, the one-time password that the system just generated and sent to your phone. Read it to me, and I will cancel the theft."
And Rohit, the senior IT professional, reads the numbers out loud.
The final step, force an action, while the victim is incapable of rational thought. Within 10 minutes of Rohit answering that phone call, 85,000 rupees are irreversibly transferred out of his account.
Yes.
I have to pause the story right here. I need to channel the utter frustration I know everyone listening is feeling right now. He works in IT. He knows the golden rule. Literally, the first, most basic rule of modern digital banking is never ever share your OTP with anyone.
It's everywhere.
It is explicitly written in capital letters inside the very text message the bank sends with the code. How could a smart man do something so incredibly foolish?
It is maddening to look at from the outside, sitting safely in our logical minds. But we have to apply the biological framework we just discussed. The Rohit who read those numbers over the phone was not the rational, highly trained IT professional.
Right, because his brain was basically hijacked.
Yes, the IT professional was completely suppressed, biochemically silenced by the cortisol and adrenaline response to fear and urgency. The entity that shared that OTP was a terrified, panicked victim in a fight-or-flight state.
So in his altered reality, in that specific moment, sharing the OTP wasn't an act of giving a thief the keys to his vault. He believed he was handing a fire extinguisher to a firefighter who was trying to save his burning house.
Handing a fire extinguisher to a firefighter, that is such a profound way to conceptualize it. The scammer successfully disguised the very weapon that would rob him as the only tool that could rescue him.
It is a breathtakingly calculated, step-by-step psychological operation. This is not a stroke of luck. It is applied behavioral psychology executed with devastating precision.
It really is.
But wait, let's rewind this entire scenario back to the very first minute of the call. I want to know about the data. How did the scammer know Rohit's name, his specific bank, and the amount of his last transaction? Was Rohit's bank actually hacked? Did they breach the mainframe?
That is a crucial question, and it points to a much broader issue regarding our digital footprint. It is highly unlikely that the core servers of a major bank were breached. Scammers don't need to hack the bank. They acquire this partial fragmented data from seemingly harmless, low-level data leaks.
Give me an example of a low-level leak. Where is this data bleeding from?
Think about your daily digital life. You order a pizza from a new food delivery app. You buy a discounted shirt from a random local e-commerce website you saw on Instagram. You sign up for a niche newsletter.
Okay, we all do that.
These smaller companies often have abysmal cybersecurity infrastructure. Eventually, they get breached. Your full name, your phone number, your email address, and perhaps the masked details of the bank card you used for that specific mundane transaction get dumped onto the dark web.
And the scammers just find it there.
Scammers act as data brokers. They buy massive, disorganized lists of this fragmented data for pennies. They use automated tools to cross-reference and piece it together, matching a phone number from a pizza order to a LinkedIn profile to a leaked shopping receipt.
So they don't actually have the keys to your financial vault at all. But they have enough atmospheric context, the pizza receipt, the bank name, to create a convincing illusion that they are already inside your vault. They use a leaked 500 rupee food delivery receipt to convince you to hand over your entire life savings.
Precisely. It proves that even minor, seemingly insignificant digital footprints are routinely weaponized to build that crucial first pillar of the scam: trust.
That is deeply, deeply unsettling. Because if our brains are biologically wired to be this vulnerable to being hijacked by fear and urgency, and if our personal data is already out there constantly being scraped and aggregated just waiting to be weaponized against us, how do we actually defend ourselves? If my technical knowledge isn't enough to save me, what is?
We have to completely change our defensive posture.
Yeah.
We have to stop relying solely on technological solutions like firewalls, spam filters, antivirus software, and start actively building a psychological firewall.
A psychological firewall. I like that.
And the sources outline 5 highly practical behavioral steps to do exactly this.
Let's break these down because this is the toolkit everyone needs right now. The first defense mechanism they outline is what they call the 10-second rule, or the rule of pause.
This is, without a doubt, the single most critical intervention you can make, and it is also the hardest to execute in the moment. The rule is brutally simple. In any urgent digital or telephonic situation, no matter who is on the other line, you must force yourself to pause for 10 full seconds before taking any action.
10 full seconds.
You stop, you breathe, and you think. The data shows that if anyone is demanding that you do it right now, there's an overwhelming probability that it is a scam.
I love the simplicity of it, but why is it so hard to do? Why is pausing for 10 seconds so difficult?
Because it requires you to actively fight your own biology and social conditioning. When someone is screaming that your account is draining, your body wants to move. Furthermore, we are socially conditioned to be polite to answer questions when asked by an authority figure.
That's true. Sitting in dead silence on a phone call for 10 seconds feels incredibly socially awkward and unnatural.
It does, but you must endure that friction.
You know, it's exactly like a circuit breaker in a house. Think about how a home electrical system works. When the electrical voltage suddenly spikes too high and threatens to literally burn the house down, the circuit breaker detects the anomaly and automatically trips, cutting the power entirely.
Right.
When you are on one of these calls, the emotional voltage is spiking dangerously high. Whether it's the sheer terror of a fake cyber police officer threatening you with jail, or the blinding excitement of being offered an impossible salary. That deliberate, uncomfortable 10-second pause is you manually reaching up and tripping the breaker. It cuts the power. It stops the emotional fire from burning your financial house down.
That is a perfect visualization. The pause gives your prefrontal cortex the precious seconds it needs to reboot, re-engage, and assess the situation logically. It literally breaks the spell of the amygdala hijack.
Okay, the breaker is tripped. You are thinking again. What is the second defense?
The second step is a behavioral mandate. Never trust, always verify.
This sounds like a spy movie slogan. How does it apply to reading my email?
It's about fundamentally changing your default operational mode from trust by default to skepticism by default. It means breaking the chain of communication. If you get a call from someone claiming to be your bank manager, you politely say, "I will call you back," and you cut the call.
And you don't ask them for their direct line, right?
Exactly. You do not ask them for a callback number. You go to your records, you look up the official customer service number yourself, and you initiate the new call.
Okay, what about emails?
If you get an urgent email with a link telling you to update a password or verify a document, you absolutely never click the provided link. You open a fresh browser window, manually type in the official website URL, log into your account, and check for official notifications there. And as Rohit's story tragically demonstrated, you never, under any circumstances, share an OTP over a phone call.
I hear what you're saying, but let's be honest about the reality of this. It sounds so simple, but it goes directly against that efficiency programming we spent so much time discussing earlier. It takes extra time. It's annoying.
It is very annoying.
Manually typing URLs and waiting on hold with official customer service when I can just click a link and be done in 5 seconds feels like a massive step backward in productivity.
It absolutely adds friction to your day. But that friction is the necessary price of security in the modern world. You are trading 5 minutes of inconvenience for the safety of your life savings, which leads directly into the third crucial step. Practice emotional neutrality.
Now you're asking me to be a robot. How do you practice emotional neutrality? We are deeply emotional creatures.
It doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means developing acute self-awareness. It requires conscious, mindful effort. You must train yourself to recognize your own emotional states when interacting with digital platforms or unverified callers.
Like checking your own pulse, essentially.
Yes, if you are reading an email or listening to a caller and you suddenly realize you are feeling a spike of fear, or if you are feeling a sudden rush of overwhelming excitement, or if you feel a strong pull of greed, you must train yourself to view those emotions as giant red warning lights.
The emotion itself is the warning.
Exactly. The moment you feel the emotion, you must immediately halt the decision-making process.
Because scams run on the fuel of human emotion, not on logic.
Precisely. By consciously decoupling your emotional state from your physical actions, your clicking, your transferring of funds, you effectively neutralize the scammer's primary and really their only weapon.
That makes total sense.
If they cannot force you into a panic and they cannot seduce you with greed, their entire script falls apart. They have zero leverage over a neutral mind.
I can see how powerful that would be. Okay, the fourth step isn't an action, it's a mindset shift. The sources call it assume you can be scammed.
This is the direct, bitter antidote to the overconfidence bias, the I know everything syndrome we explored earlier. Adopting the fundamental mindset of I am not immune, I am vulnerable, I can be fooled, is an incredibly powerful defensive posture.
Because it forces you to remain humble.
Humility is the cornerstone of security. It keeps you perpetually alert. If you operate under the daily assumption that you are a high-value target and that you possess cognitive vulnerabilities simply by virtue of being human, you will naturally slow down your decision-making process.
You will naturally seek to verify more often.
Yes. The arrogant belief in your own invulnerability is the exact vulnerability they exploit.
The moment you think you are safe is the exact moment you are in the most danger. And finally, the fifth step. Maintain digital hygiene.
This is the ongoing daily maintenance of your digital life. It's a preventative medicine. You must aggressively limit the amount of public personal information you share on social media platforms.
Right, because of the pizza receipt example.
Exactly. Remember how they build trust. The less data they can scrape about your life, your job, your family, the harder it is for them to build that initial illusion of familiarity. Furthermore, simply ignore unknown calls whenever possible.
Let it go to voicemail.
Yes. If it is genuinely important, a legitimate entity will leave a traceable message or contact you through official channels. And constantly audit your devices, avoid installing random apps that ask for excessive permissions to your contacts or your messages.
You know it's exactly like washing your hands during flu season. Washing your hands doesn't guarantee you will never get sick, but it drastically reduces the surface area for a virus to attack you. Digital hygiene reduces the surface area for a social engineer to attack you.
That is exactly right. And when we bring all of this together, when we look holistically at these 5 defensive steps, we realize a profound paradigm-shifting truth about modern security. The true battleground of the 21st century isn't technological anymore. We aren't fighting algorithms, malicious code, or supercomputers.
We are fighting other humans.
We are. The battleground is entirely psychological.
So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. What does all of this mean for you, the person listening to this right now?
We open this deep dive with a specific mission to shatter the myth that educated, tech-savvy people are immune to being scammed. And looking at the mechanics of these attacks, I think that myth has been utterly demolished.
Completely.
The core thesis here is undeniable and frankly a bit chilling. Scammers are not technological geniuses hacking into secure mainframe computers from a dark basement. They are master manipulators of human psychology operating out of office buildings.
They are pure social engineers. And we fall victim to them not because our advanced technology fails us, but because we over-rely on our technical knowledge while entirely abandoning our baseline human awareness.
We trust the system so much that we stop trusting our own critical faculties. As the source material explicitly states, being smart and being alert are 2 completely different, often opposing states of mind. That is the perfect distinction. Knowledge is having the data. It's knowing how a system works. Awareness is knowing when that data is being manipulated against you in real time. We have spent this entire deep dive proving that professional scammers treat human psychology like a predictable piece of code they can easily decipher and hack.
Yeah, they know exactly how to push the buttons of your ego, your deepest fears, and your hidden greed.
And they rely entirely on your modern desire for efficiency, your desperate need to just get through your inbox and get on with your day to ensure you never stop, pause, and question the psychological script they're running on you.
Exactly. They weaponize your own mind against you.
Yeah.
So I want to leave you with a final question to really mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We've seen how easily your ego, your fear, and your desire for efficiency can be manipulated over a simple 5-minute phone call to steal your money. But zoom out for a second.
If your brain is that predictable, what other areas of your daily life, the trajectory of your career choices, the dynamics of your personal relationships, the way you consume the daily news, or even the formation of your deepest beliefs, are being subtly, quietly manipulated by someone else simply because you're walking around absolutely convinced that you're too smart to be fooled? Take a pause, trip the breaker, and stay alert.